This is the story of a man who quit working for a brutal drug kingpin and wants a normal life after losing his sister to a drug overdose. However, the kingpin manages to force him back into the service on a collateral. Hey guys, welcome back to IM Movies. Today we're looking into the 2024 American action thriller film called Red Right Hand. But before we jump into the details, be aware there are spoilers. Now let's get right into it. The movie begins in Odom County with a man named Cash, a former drug henchman who now lives on a farm with his niece Savannah and brother-in-law Finney. Cash had lost his sister, Rachel, to a drug overdose, prompting him to quit his job to take care of Savannah. Cash, Savannah, and Finney all work on the farm, taking care of the animals to the best of their ability. After working on the farm, Cash tells Finney that he's going to church with Savannah, and then invites him to join them for lunch at a local restaurant later in the day. In church, Wilder the preacher tells his congregation that he used to commit crimes, but with God he's now a changed man. After church, Wilder talks to Cash to help Finney get himself together after hearing that he hasn't taken Savannah hunting for a while since the death of his wife. Cash promises to take her niece for hunting, and Savannah interferes to show the knife her Uncle Cash gifted. Wilder is impressed, and he knows she will use it one day, in the right time. After that, the two soon head out to a restaurant where they wait for Finney to join them. However, seeing that Finney might not show up, Cash excuses himself to give him a call. Moments later, 3 henchmen working for Cash's former boss join Savannah at the table, and they soon begin to scare her. Shortly after, Cash returns to the table and they request to speak to him alone. Subsequently, Cash soon realizes that Finney had used the farm as collateral for a loan he took from his former boss. As soon as Cash gets home, he finds Finney drunk and immediately confronts him about the loan. Finney confirms having taken the loan, stating that he didn't have a choice because he was on the verge of losing the farm. However, Cash flares up, stating that Finney could have gone to a bank instead. With the damage already done, Cash promises to fix the debt himself. The next day, Cash goes to meet with his former boss, son Zeke, at his law firm in the city center, concerning the debt. However, Zeke tells Cash that the farm now belongs to them, and that the debt is not even the kind that he can pay off with money, stating that the debt is only clear when his former boss says it is. At the same time, the henchmen arrive at Finney's house. They are the same men that Cash worked with her former boss, namely Buck, Doe, Wes, and Jet. As they go inside the house, they beat Finney up, smacking him on the ground, but Savannah manages to cut Doe on his face with her knife, prompting him to beat her up. Afterward, the men drag Finney and Savannah outside, and they shoot a gun close to Finney's ears as a warning for more to come. Moments later, Cash returns home and soon realizes that his former boss henchmen have attacked Finney and Savannah. We see 2 drug junkie boys, Harlan and Reggie. They scout the area looking for how to break in to steal drugs. However, Reggie falls into a trap pit and dies while Harlan gets caught in a leg hold trap while trying to escape. Later that day, Cash goes to meet with the head of Odom County Police, Sheriff Hollister, and his vice, Duke Parks, to tell them about the loan Finney took and the incessant attacks they've been getting from his former boss henchmen. However, Sheriff Hollister only tells him to bring evidence of his former boss' drug dealings to facilitate her arrest. Later that night, Cash finally decides to go and confront his former boss. We are then introduced to Big Cat, the drug queen. Cash meets Big Cat at her house about the attacks, and she tells him that the message was meant for him. With this, Big Cat reveals to Cash that her drug business has grown big since Cash left, but adds that she needs his expertise at this point. Afterward, Big Cat tells Cash that he needs to carry out 3 jobs to off the debt, and he agrees. Later, Cash arrives home and he finds Finney wallowing in regrets. But Cash manages to comfort him, and Finney subsequently promises to quit drinking and focus on taking care of his daughter, Savannah. At the Met Lab, Big Cat questions Harlan, asking him who he is working for. However, Harlan tells her he doesn't work for anyone, stating that he and Reggie had acted on their own accord to steal pills for themselves. Although Big Cat doesn't believe him, she promises to set him free after cutting off one of his thumbs as punishment. At the same time, Cash gets called to join Buck to trail Harlan to whoever sent him, just after dropping him off. Moments later, a car shows up to pick up Harlan, and they trail him to the house of a small-time drug dealer named Alpha. Cash quietly watches as Alpha mobilizes his men in an attempt to attack the Met Lab, and he quickly informs Buck about it. Buck calls Big Cat, and she soon sends some of her henchmen over to the location. Soon, the men, led by Doe, arrive at the location in full gear ready for combat. Buck asks Cash to go through the back, while they all go through the front as Doe hands him a gun. Soon they attack Alpha's base from the front, killing all his henchmen. However, Alpha tries to escape from the back, but Cash knocks him down moments after realizing that he had been given an unloaded gun. Afterward, Doe shoots Alpha in the head, and Cash later confronts him about the unloaded gun, but he only giggles in response. Early the next morning, Cash returns home, and he sees Finney disposing of all the alcohol he had left in the sink. Days later, Cash meets up with Wes, who reveals to him that Big Cat had instructed them to accompany one of the henchmen, Lazarus, to close a drug deal, but also make sure to end his life afterward. It appears that Lazarus had been planning some big distribution deals with Big Cat, but she wasn't happy about it. She probably thinks he's becoming too ambitious. Moments later, Lazarus joins them in the van, and they drive to the meeting spot. Soon Wes begins to act weird and Lazarus asks him about it, prompting Wes to kill him immediately. However, Cash reminds Wes that Lazarus is expected to close the deal first before his death, and Wes realizes that he has messed up. They quickly wrap up his body in a body bag and Cash devises a way to make sure the deal goes on. With this, they decide to send a message to the Kingpin named Dominic, using Lazarus's phone. In the message, they write that he won't be around but his men will handle it. Moments later, Dominic and his men arrive at the meeting spot and immediately relate his disappointment to them, stating that he doesn't like surprises. While talking, the leader spots blood on Cash's boots, proving that they must have killed Lazarus. However, Cash and Wes manage to first point their gun at them as Cash tells Dominic that they can still go on with the deal regardless. Dominic pretends to agree with Cash but suddenly pulls his gun on them, which subsequently leads into a gun battle. Dominic and his right-hand man Wayne dies in the gun battle, while Dominic's other security, who happens to be a teenager, gets shot in the leg while attempting to escape. However, Cash chooses not to kill the teenage boy and allows him to leave with the drugs while they take the cash. On their way back, their van overheats and Cash burns it just after Finney arrives to pick them up. Back at the farm, Cash reveals to Finney the kind of deal he had made with Big Cat, stating that he now only owes her one more job to pay off the debt. However, Finney suspects that Big Cat may not honor the deal and Cash reveals to him that he has a backup plan. Cash meets up with Duke in a secluded place, stating his plans to expose Big Cat's Met labs scattered all over Odom County's hills. Cash volunteers to provide the location of the labs and Duke promises to help him find out something that can be used to link Big Cat to these labs. The next day, Duke arrests one of Big Cat's local drug distributors named Tammy and confiscates the drugs in her trunk. Later that night, Doe comes to pick Cash up from the farm, but refuses to tell him where they are headed. Moments later, they arrive at Big Cat's house where she appears to be holding a get-together with her henchmen. Soon, Big Cat gives a speech praising her son Zeke for standing by her side, and then she turns to Cash, praising him for handling the recent drug deal well, even as Wes almost ruined it. Afterward, Cash walks to the fireplace where he experiences a flashback, remembering how he was made to burn his right hand just to remove Big Cat's mark from his hand when he decided to quit. Moments later, Big Cat brings a man in a wheelchair and Cash soon realizes that it's Duke. He had been kidnapped after confiscating Big Cat's merchandise from Tammy. Afterward, Big Cat entertains her henchmen as she orders Jet to hit him. After that, she calls up Buck and Doe to continue the torture. The brothers use hammers to smash Duke's knees, causing his bones to shatter. Soon, everyone became cold as they could no longer stand to watch the torture. Moments later, Big Cat makes an open offer for anyone to continue the torture. Seeing that no one is willing, Cash steps forward and asks Big Cat to allow him to finish Duke off and bury him quietly in the wood. However, Big Cat slits Duke's throat herself and orders Cash to dispose of his bones after her dogs must have eaten his body. On the other hand, Cash tells Big Cat that he's done after disposing of the body, but she tells him that he'll only be free when she says he's done. Cash realizes his plans have failed, and he decides to go ahead with his backup plan. The next morning, Buck finds evidence of communication between Duke and Cash, and he reports it to Big Cat, who immediately orders for his execution. The next morning, Finney calls Cash as he and Savannah prepare to go to church, but Cash tells him that he won't be going with them, stating that his first plan to gather evidence against Big Cat had failed. After church, Big Cat's men attack Finney and Savannah, beating Finney brutally with clubs without mercy, until Wilder intervenes. Moments later, Cash arrives at the hospital, and Wilder informs him that Finney is now dead. Cash comforts Savannah on her father's death as they both mourn. Afterward, Wilder asks Cash to talk to God about his plans first before taking any step. In his prayers, Cash tells God to help him protect Savannah as he goes to avenge his family. Meanwhile, Sheriff Hollister visits Big Cat, telling her to caution her boys as he may no longer be able to cover up for her crimes, revealing that they attacked Finney in front of people in broad daylight. At this point, is then revealed that Sheriff Hollister has been on Big Cat's payroll all along, which means he knows about Duke's death, and of course Big Cat's drug dealings. However, Big Cat threatens to replace him as sheriff, stating that there are lots of people waiting in line to take his position. Later that day, Cash begins his attacks, starting with Lee, one of Big Cat's henchmen, and then Doe, who were both spotted in the same car. Afterward, Cash tries to leave the area but his van fails, prompting him to leave on foot as he spots Buck arrive at the scene. Moments later, an ambulance arrives to evacuate the body, and Sheriff Hollister reveals to Big Cat that Cash is responsible for the attack. At the same time, Big Cat's men attack Wilder in his house as they search for Savannah. However, Savannah, who had been hiding in the roof, steps out and surrenders herself, as she could not bear to see Wilder suffer. Shortly after, Cash returns home and Wilder tells him that they've taken Savannah away, stating that they want to do a straight swap, his life for hers. However, Wilder and Cash devise their own plan. They kidnap Big Cat's only surviving son, Zeke, from his law firm, as they attempt to use him to get Savannah back. On hearing the news of Zeke's kidnap, Big Cat calls Cash and threatens to kill Savannah if he doesn't return her son, stating they'll both have to bury their loved one if he disagrees. With this, Cash agrees to bring Zeke to her place while Big Cat begins to mobilize her men in anticipation. At the same time, Cash sneaks into Big Cat's property, while Wilder ties Zeke to the bonnet of his car as he drives him to the front of his mother's house. Seeing this, Big Cat instructs her men not to shoot to avoid hitting her son. She also instructs them to look over in every side of the house to watch for Cash. Subsequently, Wilder requests that he see Savannah first before releasing Zeke to her. Meanwhile, Savannah manages to set herself free and subsequently uses a gun to kill Wes watching her. With this, Big Cat's men begin to shoot at Wilder, narrowly missing Zeke in the process. At the same time, Cash kills Big Cat's dog handler, and soon begins to take down Big Cat's henchmen one after the other, as he goes into the house to look for Savannah. Also, as Wilder continues to engage in a gun battle, he challenges Jet, and after a while, they both fatally shoot themselves down. Meanwhile, Zeke finally manages to set himself free and runs into the woods to hide, following his mother's advice. However, as soon as the dogs spot Zeke, they attack him. Big Cat hears his son scream and rushes to help him, but to her surprise, the dog that she feeds with human is now feasting his son's lifeless body. At the same time, Buck goes after Savannah, who at this time is wielding an M4, strongly defending herself. Savannah later runs out of bullets, but Cash comes to her rescue. Cash and Buck soon face each other and they both fight dirty to the ground. Buck knocks Cash to the ground, but Cash manages to kill him with a broken piece of glass. Afterward, Big Cat in rage begins to target Savannah and Cash, shooting sporadically at them. Cash gets shot in the leg and he asks Savannah to escape through the window. As Big Cat steps in to take her last fatal shot at Cash, Savannah appears behind her and kills her with a pocket knife that her uncle Cash gifted, marking Wilder's word that she will use it at the right time. Months later, it is revealed that Wilder and Cash had both survived their gunshots, as Odom County is now free from Big Cat's terror and drug dealing. And this is where our story ends. If you'd like to see us recap any other movies or topics you have in mind, just drop a comment and let us know. And don't forget to hit the like button, share this recap, and subscribe to stay updated for the next one. Until next time.